At 6 a.m, I should definitely be asleep, which means it's time for a Roadmap Roundup. For a lot of people, 3.17.2 has been a really good patch, but 3.18 feels like it's on the horizon, with Ivacati testing coming pretty soon. Well, today we had a Roadmap Roundup that was just items added to 3.18. Now, of course, before we start going through these, it's always important to remember that with the roadmap, it can be a little iffy. Sometimes things will get pushed, sometimes things will get removed. If we get like 50% of the stuff through, that's pretty good. But I don't want to see anyone in the comments months from now being like, hey, Croncy, this got pushed. Why isn't it in the patch? You said it'd be in the patch. All right? Now, it's important to remember with 3.18, from what we know that was going to come into this patch, it was a very back-end heavy patch. Cargo refactor, as well as persistent entity streaming were the two big things for this one. Also, for some people, salvage and the introduction of the vulture. Other than that, there was nothing really gameplay-wise that was coming in the patch that we could get excited for. Now we kind of can. So let's start off with the very first thing that's being added to 3.18 release view, and that is the Daymar crash site. A derelict settlement on Daymar using parts of the Star Runner and 600i, as well as some habs adapted to the biome, to create a point of interest with some type of activity, a puzzle, traversal, hostile AI, missions, etc., as well as rewards for completion. This one we were kind of expecting. We've been seeing a lot of work on the derelicts, especially all the 3.17.2 derelict reclaimer missions that we've been seeing. And we've also been shown a couple of reference images for other vehicles in a derelict state. The Mercury Star Runner and the 600i are really nice choices too, because I think they have really cool interiors that lend themselves well to a little bit of FPS fights. The guys that have been doing all of these derelict crash sites have actually been really solid and really quick. So I don't expect this one to get pushed and should be pretty sweet in 3.18. Next up, being added to 3.18 release view is the new rivers in Stanton, setting up biome-specific object rule sets around bodies of water and distributing those by placing additional rivers and lakes on Microtech and Hurston. Now, we actually got shown a lot of this during last week's ISC with an update from the guy who actually makes the river tool. And we saw images there of some of the rivers on Hurston. Once again, this is one of those things that was bound to happen pretty soon. We just had the first river introduced on Microtech, and they've shown that the tool can be used pretty easily with some very satisfying results. Adding to that by having these object rule sets, which I assume is going to be place this type of tree, this type of rock, if it's in this type of biome, means we're going to have a lot more unique rivers as well, rather than just the same copy and pasted river that we might get on Microtech. Staying in the environmental factor, we've got the sand cave archetypes, establishing the visual language creation pipeline and quality standard for a new sand cave archetype. With this release, cave networks using this archetype will be placed throughout the Stanton system. I don't know about you, but caves are incredibly boring. Whether it's because the missions don't work or just because it's lonely and there's not really much to do in there. I am ecstatic for sand caves. Anytime we get some sort of new environment to explore, that's awesome, as well as it's more variety onto the cave archetype that we already have. I assume that these sand caves can also use the same tools that they used to set up the caves previously, which, if I remember correctly, we had a bunch of caves introduced just last year. This one's a big one for you racers out there. Arena Commander Classic Race Mode Overhaul. A complete overhaul of all systems and maps in Arena Commander's Classic Race Mode. Improvements include a complete refactor of the checkpoint entity and race manager system, improvements to scoring, a complete rework of all 3 New Horizons Speedway maps, as well as a new map, the Snake Pit. All of the racing discords that I'm in are already going absolutely crazy over this. The Snake Pit was introduced with 3.17.2 and is an in-game racing track. Originally created by XGR, the guys at the Montreal team actually took that and gave it proper boundaries and a nice feel to it. So firstly, I'm really excited that they're bringing Snake Pit into Arena Commander, where we can practice it a lot easier. The only thing is, we don't really have atmosphere or gravity on Arena Commander, so I'm hoping that these improvements and reworks actually include atmosphere and gravity. One of the things that people forget a lot about Arena Commander is that it runs a lot better than Star Citizen does. This means you can practice on those racetracks and respawn to your heart's content. I know Arena Commander doesn't mean really much of anything to a lot of people, but to some people, this is huge. But equally as huge to those of us who are criminally inclined, Sandbox Prison activities. Expansion of prison gameplay with a new suite of missions and sandbox activities to give inmates more opportunities to earn merits or to aid in their escape from prison. I have no idea what this could mean, honestly, but it's additional gameplay, it's prison gameplay. There still is an issue in Star Citizen with prison not really being enough time or being too easy to get out of. But if you give us more options of things to do in prison, a larger sentence may not be as off-putting. Right now, as it stands in prison, you're either escaping or you're doing the missions. Third option, logging off. It's a very, very boring system. Obviously, it's a punishing system for criminals, but it shouldn't be a thing that says you've done bad things, you're going to be punished with bad gameplay. It should be, you are now forced to play this interesting gameplay. That's my 2 cents at least. So hopefully these prison activities are at least mildly fun. I'm sure I will end up testing them out by accident after I commit multiple accidental crimes. Speaking of crimes, security post-career. This is a weird one. Security post-career reactivation. Security post-career will be taking a more central role in Stanton's security. Crusader Security have moved in a full-time staff and have begun storing confiscated contraband aboard. The station will be off-limits to all civilians unless given prior authorization. What? So I've got a couple of theories here. So Security Post Korea, for those that don't know, is an abandoned security post that orbits Cellin, and it is one of the most popular places for you to go clear your crime stat. It's also a very popular place for loot. What I think this actually might be alluding to is likely a dynamic event. A criminal dynamic event. I'm really not sure how this is going to go. What do you think they're going to do with Security Post Korea? Make sure you put down in the comments below with your theories, but I'm kind of hoping for dynamic event. I think that'll be pretty cool. If you've been playing 3.17.2 at all, hopefully you've been playing some Siege of Orison when it works. Well, looks like those platforms are not going to be unused forever, which is great because we have new missions on Orison. Bounty, Assassinate, Clear All, and other missions to take place on the platforms created for Siege of Orison, which, in future, will be distributed across the planet of Crusader to create further content. So this is two really, really good things. First of all, they're not wasting any assets. The new platforms are awesome. They've got really cool locations. They've got great spawn closets, and it's an awesome event as well. But what happens when the dynamic event isn't running? Well, it sounds like we're going to be able to actually do some missions there, which means we're going to be using some of those spawn closets. We're going to be using some of those shuttles. So that's really good, firstly. Secondly, distributed across the planet of Crusader to create further content. Since Orison was released last year, it is the only jump point on Crusader. No other landing pads. This has always seemed kind of wild to me that we wouldn't have maybe like floating bunkers or something scattered throughout the planet, or at the very least some sort of gas harvesting building. So once again, fantastic, big fan, more content, more gameplay. This is ticking all the right boxes. Next up, we've got new Interdiction Scenarios, adding new variations and difficulty levels of interdiction scenarios that players will come across while quantum traveling. Now, we haven't really got much information from that, but it is interesting. Right now, if you get interdicted by NPCs, usually it's like 2 to 3 ships fighting you. They're very easy to escape. If you kill the Mantis, you're good most of the time. So hopefully, this will add some stuff. I would love if it was possible to get interdicted by an Idris. Obviously not great if you're a new player, but the concept of that, getting interdicted by an Idris, is actually really cool. I hope that happens. Almost at the end, environmental space missions. Implementation of new missions and scenarios that the player will encounter as they wander around an area of space. The missions that appear will be based on the probability volumes that the player is currently in. So my head doesn't quite grasp probability volumes and all that sort of stuff. It just shows, once again, that we are getting actually a bunch of gameplay focused features for 3.18. It's not just PES, it's not just cargo refactor. I do hope, however, that these end up being more than just Rex or NPC fighting. One thing I've always wanted for something like this is maybe we find a really rare rock as we're just traveling through space. We give it a scan, it's crazy off the charts good, and then we can sell that location to miners. I feel like that's something that could work for environmental space missions, but once again, let me know, what do you think these environmental space missions actually will involve? Lastly, we actually have a change to one of the things that we know is coming in 3.18 with salvaging. This first implementation of salvaging is only hull stripping. We've already been told that. And we were previously informed that it would be FPS and Drake Vulture hull stripping. Well, now, your reclaimer may actually finally have a use. Previously, this initial release of the hull stripping feature was limited to FPS and the Drake Vulture. This is being updated to also include hull stripping aboard the Aegis Reclaimer, using its remote salvage turrets. Therefore, this card description has been updated to reflect this. Salvages unite. And that's about it for the Roadmap Roundup. A pretty big one that's very exciting. We were talking on the stream about this a couple of days ago about how we didn't really know any features that were coming out in 3.18 that weren't back-end stuff. And I'm happy that they've let us know, at the very least, this is what they're aiming for. Lots of gameplay opportunities, lots of happiness from this guy. If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to know for the next time that I release a Star Citizen video. There is a monthly report coming out today, so it may be sooner than you think. Make sure you guys are enjoying yourself during Siege of Orison. Have a good one. Come on, sub 140, sub 140. Come on. Come on. Come on, you son of a bitch. Yes! It was brain power. It was all about brain power, chat. That's all we needed.